Good afternoon, friends. A warm welcome to you and a warm welcome to you, Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Thank you very much for readily accepting our invitation to speak about an issue that has been making news for years. People are aware of the battle you have been waging against corruption, and Jayalalitha, Shashikala were among the people who have been sent to prison because of the efforts or the cases you had initiated and so on. So corruption has been a major issue in this country, and you have been waging a relentless battle. And on Wednesday, I find Rajya Sabha has passed legislation to say that anybody who gives a bribe to a government servant can be jailed for 7 years. Now, is that going to, of course, it has to be passed in the Lok Sabha, but will that solve the problem? Can we also introduce legislation which says anybody who accepts a bribe should also be jailed? And you have spent a lot of time filing case against corrupt politicians and civil servants and so on. So we are looking forward to what you have to say about how serious the problem of corruption in India is. Is it really destabilizing the Indian economy? It's interesting to see that Chidambaram was charge-sheeted along with his son and more than a dozen people yesterday. So this subject becomes that much more topical. So I'm delighted to invite you, Dr. Swamy, to speak. Thank you.
I think what I would do is I'll first describe how corruption actually has an impact on the Indian economy as well as Indian policy making. Then I will speak about how to combat it. And let me tell you at the outset that you saw this bill was only filling a gap which existed because there's already a Prevention of Corruption Act where bribes taken by bureaucrats is an offense, or same thing, 7 years. So this is just, there was no provision for those who give bribes, any action against those people. The first thing is, impact of corruption is you see it in the Bombay roads, all these potholes. Tenders are floated and then it's manipulated for a bribe. And after the bribe is paid, the contractors put substandard material. And so every rain, building a road means building another road after the rains. So it's a yearly tenders coming and bribes being collected. So you get substandard products on the question of roads, adulteration in your food, medicines, in buildings now. There's I think Noida, just now one building has collapsed because of substandard material that was used, and that the clearances were given also illegally. So bribe is something which lowers the standards that are required to be for human beings, and therefore all the complaints that we have, the electricity not working or going in frequent breakdowns, everything can be traced to bribes that have been paid. The second impact of corruption is when you have so much money which is unaccounted. You can't invest in business because then it becomes visible and the income tax can chase you. So what people do is, inside their houses, they build mansions, they get Italian marbles and will get air conditioning in every room. and bathroom and so on, and live a luxurious life. And what this does is two things. One, the demand for luxury goods goes up, and the rate of return on the investment in luxury goods is much higher than, say, producing for the common man. And that's why today we find, by using sophisticated matrix analysis for the economy, that 70% of our investment is either going directly or indirectly to sustain luxury goods production. That includes, of course, 5-star hotels, 7-star hotels. Most of them are going full, and that's because it is all because of black money. So the investment priorities in your country get distorted, and against what the country needs. And therefore you will find agriculture being sacrificed, because that's where the rate of return is not very high. And people prefer urban areas and producing luxury goods. The third effect you find is in currency manipulation. Cash is converted through the Hawala route into foreign exchange, and foreign exchange then comes back to India as short-term loans. And I think Mr. Chidambaram, by the way, Chidambaram also is being prosecuted on my case, which on Aircel Maxis, which I filed in the Supreme Court. So Mr. Chidambaram had developed this participatory notes, which were incredible, which no other country in the world has designed. And that is that you go to Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or US Fidelity Investments, and in any foreign country, and you bring Indian cash in Indian rupees, or you bring it in dollars, not in rupees, excuse me, in dollars, converted through the Hawala, and you place it in the counter of the bank and show your Indian passport, and they'll give you a piece of paper on which there'll be no date, no name, no serial number, only the amount. So that amount, that piece of paper is called a participatory note, and you bring it to India. It's legal, and the Reserve Bank will give you a receipt. And then you go and give the stockbroker this piece of paper, and he will buy you the stocks that you want to buy. And when this sort of gush comes in, the stock market goes up, and then you sell it at the top, and the stockbroker will pay you in rupees. You take the rupees to the Reserve Bank and show your receipt, and they are mandatorily have to give you dollars for that. And so this exchange rate has been falling and falling from a long time. I mean, in the year 1977, when the Janata first came to power, the exchange rate was 7 rupees to a dollar. Today it's almost 70 rupees to a dollar. So this is because the amount of rupees that is thrown into the market, into the currency market, makes the dollar price go up. So participatory note then creates a lot of fluctuations in the stock market. And the stock market of ours is perhaps the most fluctuating stock market, and many people say is the most rigged market of all. So this is one aspect. Then the fourth is the national security angle. Corruption. With this corrupt money, you have to go to Dubai or perhaps Singapore, but mostly Dubai, to get hold of a Hawala operator who then will make a phone call to Switzerland or one of these secret banking countries like Virgin Islands or Cayman Islands, and say to his agent or his associate that I've got so many crores of rupees in cash. It's in India. It's in a container, big container, and you deposit the equivalent at the exchange rate which they fix in such and such bank account with such and such a number, and the secret bank account. So that agent deposits the money, And when somebody comes from here and wants a better exchange rate than 70 rupees, the same agent will give you rupees because he's already got it in a canister. So what happens in the process is that I learned that in Dubai, it's impossible for a Hawala operator to operate unless he cooperates with the ISI agents of Pakistan. And Dawood was also a big player there. And so I am told that Pakistanis and Dawood knows the bank accounts and the passwords of most of our top politicians. And at least one politician I know in the front of a friend of mine did an operation. So I had confronted him, and he, of course, was very upset that I came to know, but I have not made it public. I don't see why I should make it public for one person. But anyway, politicians in power become compromised on national security. Many of our politicians don't take a hard line on Pakistan because of this factor, that they may be, and they say some absurd things in favor of Pakistan that's even more surprising. And so we find this national security weakened by it. And because of corruption, during the time Mr. Chidambaram was finance minister, we in our country, we print our currency notes, but the currency paper we don't manufacture. And that is purchased from a company in London, I think it's called Deolite or something like that, which also prints currency paper for Pakistan. And despite the fact that the CBI and the RAW warned Mr. Chidambaram that you should not buy currency paper from this company because they are producing currency paper for Pakistan. And it will be easy for them to bribe the company and get Indian currency paper, blank currency paper, and then print it themselves. And therefore, Pakistani counterfeit notes in India are galore. I mean, I would suppose 20% of our currency is printed in Pakistan. It's a counterfeit currency. So that what will do what that will do. As a consequence, terrorists in our country find it very easy to use Pakistan counterfeit notices or rupees for their operations. So we have really vastly weakened our national security because of corruption. I need hardly tell you that black money in elections has a major impact on our elections. There's lack of accountability. The cinema world, the Bombay, Bollywood or Tamil Nadu, they are all dependent on this kind of money. And it generally comes from Dubai for Bombay and comes from LTT and all in Tamil Nadu. And so the cinema world, the themes, the way, the projections, the focus is often dictated to by the underworld in Dubai, which has a big presence in Bombay. Now, when you look at this multi-dimensional effect on your economy, what do you think would happen to your economy? Now, we all know, those who have studied technical economics or mathematical economics, that the growth rate of GDP is the rate of investment divided by what something is called as a capital output ratio. The capital output ratio gives you how much you have to invest to get 1 rupee in perpetuity as your return. I invest so much, and every year I will get 1 rupee. What is that number? So generally speaking, in efficient economies, the number is 3. 3 is the number, that is, if you invest 3 rupees, then you are assured in perpetuity 1 rupee every year in the future. Now, India, it is almost 5, which means it's very inefficient. And the inefficiency is because of the fact that we are using our capital most inefficiently, partly because of corruption. Now, our rate of interest is 36, rate of investment is 36% of GDP. 36 is one of the, it's pretty high. But because our capital output ratio is 5, which is in the denominator, so that means a little more than 7% growth rate, which is what we are having today. Supposing this was not 5, but it was 3, then you would have 12% per year. So without any additional, if you could eliminate corruption and you could have a corruption-free economy or minimal corruption, then the growth rate in the country would be much larger. It will be 12%, 13% easily, and 12%, 13% for 10 years means India's poverty will come down to the American level. So this corruption is making our capital to be inefficiently deployed, and then of course the rate of the investment pattern, that the investment priorities are 70% in favor of luxury goods. So automatically where it should be spent in agriculture and other places doesn't get spent. So there, your growth rate today has come down, is not able to exceed 7%. It's because of corruption. And the only way you can do it is, of course, you could save 50% of your income, which is GDP, which is impossible to think of. No country has such a high. I mean, Chinese have reached a maximum 40, but they are able to have higher growth rates than India because their capital, the use of their capital is more efficient. So you have this in this situation that the Indian economy has been badly affected by corruption in 2 ways. One, your investment priorities got changed, which has caused problems for you because agriculture has suffered, and agriculture is having suffered, and agriculture employs 60% of your population. Plus, most of our employment in the industrial sector come from the small and medium industry, which don't easily get loans from banks. The interest rates have been raised arbitrarily high, and particularly when Mr. Raghuram Rajan was the governor. And so the cost of capital being so high, you find that unemployment increases have become, the unemployment is growing faster because many of the small and medium industries are winding up. So the question becomes, I have explained to you what the impact in various dimensions is of corruption. I've also explained to you how directly you can see the impact on your economy, the growth rate in particular. So the question becomes, how do you fight corruption? And here, my view is, mathematically, I had worked out a model which is published in one of my books called Corruption and Corporate Governance, where I had argued that when can you see a society being honest without being policed to be honest? I mean, going catching people, putting them in jail, that is not a good way for a long-term solution to capital, to corruption. People must themselves feel that this is the rational way to be. To be honest is rational, and to be corrupt is irrational. So I would say, if one were to put this in mathematically, then it would be like this, that if this is the statistical term, mathematical statistical term, if my expected value, you can say average value, of taking a bribe is negative. Why? Because I get a bribe, that's a big positive amount, but I could be caught, and therefore I have to pay a penalty, and that penalty is a negative amount. So the probability of being caught and the amount you gain is the amount that you get as a bribe, and the probability of not being caught, that should be multiplied, and then added to being caught and how much you would lose or the penalty you suffer. If that is negative, then any rational person will say that I don't want to be corrupt, because in the average I'll be losing. So therefore my advice to governments is that if you want to fight corruption, catch the big fish first. Then the clerks and the policemen and so on. And then the message will go that if those people can be caught, so can I. And that's how this calculus will work, and this is one way of doing it. Then I would like to see our laws become simpler, not more complex. And I'm sorry to say the BJP government has made it much more complex. That's because of Mr. Jaitley. I don't think he knows any economics. He's just a lawyer. And lawyers like complicated systems because then you can get many cases also. So we have this GST, or of course the demonetization could have worked if we had been prepared for it, but we weren't prepared for it. Most of these measures we have brought, there is today a feeling of tax terrorism. That will only drive people more to creating more black money. So we must have a very simple system. I am now in favor, and I've been in favor for some time, that one of the ways to reduce corruption very drastically is to abolish income tax. And income tax is not paid by people in the agricultural field, and those who have chartered accountants who can write off as expenses, they don't pay very much. It's really the middle class, the young entrepreneurs, these are the people who pay these taxes. And we get about 6 lakh crores every year in rupees as tax revenue, income tax revenue. But we have now alternative methods of raising resources. And the 2G spectrum auction has produced in the last 2 years 4 lakh crores a year. The coal blocks auction has not yet really taken place seriously, but that can give you 3 times the amount the income tax can give you. So I think we should, as a policy, look for alternative methods of resource mobilization rather than this income tax method, which encourages income tax officers to be also corrupt. So simplification of our thing. And GST, for example, is going to promote corruption in a big way because of the number of forms you have to fill and the complications and so on. But I would think that we should have not more than 20 commodities subject to excise taxes, and they give you 90% of the revenue instead of these 4,000 commodities that we today collect excise taxes. So this simplification is one way of doing it. Secondly, money that's abroad can be brought back if you're serious about it. We have not been serious about it. BJP has not been, BJP government has not, I mean the finance ministry has not been serious about it. The way to do it is the way the Egyptians did with Mubarak, and the Libyans did it with Gaddafi, and the Filipinos did it with Marcos. And that is to rely on the United Nations resolution on corruption of 2005, where the United Nations said that if any country passes a legislation that all accounts of their citizens in foreign countries which engage in secret banking, like Macau or Virgin Islands or Cayman Islands, etc., or Switzerland, all these Indian accounts are hereby nationalized, subject to the condition that if anyone can prove that the money that they have put in is already been declared, the Reserve Bank has their listing, and that money into it has been clean money. then those accounts would be defrozen and given to them. But all the others can be collected by this method. And this method, in my opinion, I've been urging our government to do it, but they have not done it. It's the most effective way. And you know how much we have got? We have got 30 times the income tax revenue we get in foreign countries in Mr. Chidambaram's account this time we have added up. It's 6 lakh crores. That's enormous. 6 lakh crores. And therefore, and of course, I hardly need to tell you I'm on this National Herald case. I will hope to soon do a supplementary prosecution of Ms. Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi on their money abroad. But there is plenty of money. We got 120 lakh crores, 120 lakh crores in foreign money deposits. It's a huge amount. It's almost $1 trillion. You see, a little more than $1 trillion. That's a huge amount. Our total foreign exchange reserve is only $350 million. And this is more than 1 trillion. So that money can be brought back by this method. But this method has not been deployed, has not been used. And naturally, it's, we are a society which is a cartelization of our society has taken place in the last 20 years. And this time when I've been prosecuting Mr. Chidambaram or all the other people who are out on bail, I found surprisingly resistance came from our own bureaucracy, who started scurrilous campaigns against honest investigators and so on. So this cartelization is making it extremely difficult. But I am quite happy to say that we have done more than previous governments have done in fighting corruption. And we need to do more. And I would add finally that we had this country's cultural system, we never venerated a wealthy man. We venerated somebody who was a knowledgeable person. So in Hindi or in Sanskrit words borrowed in Hindi, Jnani and Tyagi. That is, he is a learned man, but he's also self-sacrificing. And that's why Mr. Gandhi used to go in loincloth and people used to follow him. When I first went to do my PhD in America, my classmate used to ask me, how you Indians follow this man who can't even dress properly, you see. And when I asked them, do you think that Gandhi comes to your country, you won't let him do any public activity? He said, no, we'll put him in jail for indecent exposure. So that, I think we must bring those values back where money is necessary but not sufficient. You must lead a simple life. If you have more money than you need, you give philanthropy and so on. I think that cultural revolution has to come. This one-dimensional attachment to material prosperity is a great promoter of corruption in our country. And many times businessmen nowadays tell me the easiest way to make money is be in politics. Why should we work so hard and run factories and take all this trouble? And it's a fact that politicians make money faster than any businessman, however brilliant he is. So overall, I would say corruption weakens the entire fiber of a nation. It makes you amenable, as history also shows, to be your country to be taken over by somebody or something else than your own native inspiration, and that it makes terrorism easier, and it causes the law and order in your country to deteriorate much faster. You become weak against your enemies. It's a cancer on your society. and it requires primary attention in any country, and certainly a country like India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. I'll throw the session open to question and answer. May I begin by asking, if you were the finance minister or the prime minister of India, what are the 4 things you would to reduce corruption and increase the rate of growth?
See, rate of growth can be increased without any additional efforts by just making the allocation of capital more efficient. If part today, the euphemism for corruption in international circles is, it's called transaction cost. Today, you want to invest here, then you have to bribe the electricity man, you have to bribe the land records man. So there's so much extra that you have to pay. If that goes away, the cost of capital becomes much lower. And if cost of capital becomes lower, you're going to get a higher growth rate. And India needs basically 10 years of a 10% growth rate. And 10% growth rate you can have if you bring your capital output ratio to 3 and your rate of savings at 30%. So 30 divided by 3 gives you 10%. So I don't think that it's a difficult task at all. It can be done. And I would begin by first changing the psychological mood in this country. And that is why I'm so keen that income tax should be abolished. And there's nothing sacrosanct about nobody in agriculture pays income tax. And even in the non-agricultural sector, if you have good chartered accountants, they'll find you many ways by which you can write off this and write off that to bring down taxes. So make people willing to comply with the system, and not out of fear, but because they want to cooperate in the governance of the country. That would be the best way.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Hello. Yeah, this is Manish Kumar Jha from Business World. Sir, you spoke about the contemporary malaise of corruption, basically. You spoke at length about. But I want to understand from you, post-independent India, we had a grand vision. There was the freedom fighters who led the country. How did it start off so much, and how did it seep into society, and when did it start off? Like, it has engulfed everywhere and institutionalized, and it's everywhere now. I would like your perspective on that to understand, because from my generation, I know what is happening. From your perspective, it's more broader. Thank you very much.
Well, I think the first big mistake we made in the economy, particularly, and in international politics, was to adopt the Soviet economic model. There was a lot of propaganda in those days during the freedom struggle, that there is no inflation in Soviet Union, there is no poverty in Soviet Union, there is no unemployment in Soviet Union. Of course, now we know there is no Soviet Union also. That system was unsuitable for India because it was based on the principle that you extract resources from agriculture and invest it in industrialization. Now, in the Soviet Union, you could make an arguable case because during the Tsar period, there was an agricultural revolution in what was then Russia. And so they could extract resources, and they did extract resources. But in India, see, 1857 was supported by the peasantry of India. They gave the money, they gave the manpower also. And so after that rebellion was crushed, the British set into motion the zamindari system, where criminals were appointed as zamindars, given the right to collect as much revenue as they wanted, provided they gave a fixed amount every year to the British for running the administration. So and they also gave them power that if a farmer is unable to pay, then you can take the jewels of his wife, and she didn't have any jewels, then his brother's property and so on. They gave them enormous property, and the zamindari system brought us to the level of complete, utter poverty in 1947 in agriculture. It was bone dry. At that time, to adopt the Soviet model was a disaster. And that's why in 1965-66, we had this great near famine, for which we had to rely on PL 480 grain from the Americans. And the New York Times had a big headline, India is from ship to mouth, or mouth to ship, whichever. I mean, the kind of disparaging comments used to be made. But fortunately, at that time, Lal Bahadur Shastri brought in this green revolution, which is only applied to 10% of our population, of the agricultural population. But they did produce the surplus. Today, even today, agriculture is the lowest cost in the world in most things. Grain, rice, wheat, and so on. We could be an agricultural exporting country. We could be a globalized agricultural sector. But no effort has been made so far for that, because it requires a lot of infrastructure, which we don't have. So that's how it's all deteriorated. Then the license quota system, that brought in the black money in a big way. And touts emerged in the picture. They joined the ruling party, and because they wanted power to get, and they used to get the licenses and quotas and then sell it in the black market. And that's how the process began. And then Mrs. Gandhi banned the companies giving donations to political parties. So therefore, companies had to give in cash. So that further encouraged our politics to be polluted. So this is how it deteriorated. We haven't had really basically a real economic reform. We had deregulation during Mr. Narasimha Rao's time. But really a major transformation of the economy into a where people are motivated by incentives. We haven't done that yet.
Sir, Kumar Rakesh from Global Governance News Group. Actually, just today in Lok Sabha, Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh claimed by 2030, India will be top 3 by economy status, number 1. How, just you visualize that. Number 2, how dollar and rupees, once upon a time, there was a parallel economy. Now, far difference.
Yes, I know.
So how will just come to
first of all,
number 3, do you think there is any corruption in this Modi government? Thank you.
Where corruption?
There is any corruption in the Modi government?
Okay.
Any
Modi.
type of corruption, yes or no?
Will we end it by 2019?
Either till 48 months.
Is there corruption? Okay, fine. That's a good question.
So this is a coordinated question. Thank you.
First one about Rajnath's thing is wrong, because we are already the 3rd largest. It depends on how you evaluate the GDPs of the various countries. So if you use the purchasing power parity, which is what the economists will only prescribe, that is, take the currency of one of these 3 countries, top 3 means America, China, India, and take the prices of one of these countries and evaluate the production of all 3 countries in the same price. So in America, you see, you have a haircut, which will cost you $60, and $60 multiplied with 7, it will be $4,200. I don't need to pay $4,200 in India for a haircut, and we get much better haircut than in America. So, therefore, you should take what this purchasing power parity rate. Either you evaluate all 3 GDPs in Indian prices, or in Chinese prices, or American prices, and compare. If you do that, then India is already number 3. That is on the exchange rate basis.
Not PPP.
It is not on purchasing power parity. You see, so that's why I'm saying that you can't compare these, because the exchange rate doesn't reflect the true prices, you see, what you pay. So, therefore, that is not the issue. But I would say that if India were really able to concentrate on innovations, then we can in 10 years overtake China. And then our direct confrontation with America will start, because America prides in itself on innovation. And if we become a competitor in that, we're going to have problems with them. Yes, please. What's your last question? Is there any corruption in the Modi government? Okay. Now, I thought when I exposed the Congress corruption, that Congress will expose the Modi corruption. Now you want me to do both, is it? That's not my work. I mean, I don't have only 24 hours a day. I have only 24 hours a day. I can't, I mean, I'm running around courts anyway. Every day I'm in a court. And I'm not even a lawyer. I'm just learnt law, that's all. And I think it's a job of the Congress. They should, they go on talking about Rafale, but then why don't they do like I've done, go and file a private complaint? I've done it with Sonia Gandhi, I've done it with Chidambaram, I've done it with all these people. I did it with Shashi Tharoor on this murder thing. And I think I'm surprised that the Congress has so many lawyers. None of them seem to be doing any of this work. Are they saying that there is no corruption in Modi government? That's all I'll ever assume. There is no corruption in Modi government because Congress has not been able to come up with a single example of corruption. Now you asking me to find, I don't have time. That's the problem. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm Ratnajyoti. I work for S&P Global Platts. My question is, what should be the India's response to Donald Trump administration's dictate that India should stop importing
from Iran?
Iran. Yeah, what is your take on that?
Well, tell him to go to hell because Iran's so close. Or give me price oil at the... America has a lot of shale oil. They should give it at the price Iran gives oil to us. Then we'll say to Iran, Tata, we will buy from America. Yeah, and no shipping costs that we will not pay. Americans will have to pay.
Okay. And yeah.
Mr. Swamy, some of the biggest corruptions you have chased, I've always noticed that your opposition has always failed to grill you because your research is meticulous. I would like to know from you in India, what is the problem? Identifying corruption or sustaining it through meticulous investigation?
Well, see, I'm frankly in a unique position that I was brought up in Delhi. I went to school here, college here. My father was government, he was the head of the Central Statistical Organization. My father-in-law is ICS, and I have brothers-in-law or sambandhis. So I have lots of spies in the administration. So it's not that difficult for me to collect things. I can make a phone call and get it. The other day I produced an income tax report of Miss Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi in the court. They asked me, how did you get it? I said, the morning when the newspaper man came, he threw the newspapers on my porch, and when I saw one of the income tax report was inside that. How can I identify? So Delhi is a place that leaks. If you are meticulous, if you can assure protection to those who come and give you material, they find your way. I did it in 2G. I mean, the entire files used to come by the time photostated and used to arrive in my house. So I think people are ready. Actually, people are unhappy with corruption, but they have no confidence that anyone will take it to its logical end. That's the only difficulty. If you can create an impression that, as in Hindi they say, "Chedo mat, chedne ke baad chodo mat." You see, that once you start, you're not going to stop. That impression you give, a lot of people come and give you the material. That's how it is meticulous. No, I don't have to do anything. No incentive at all. They have their own, either they have their own anger at something, they don't like their senior officers, they want to get them in trouble. Or there are people who strongly feel that their society should be cleansed of corruption. There are all kinds of people. And I don't have to promise anybody.
Okay. Sir, hello. 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 Sir, my question is that the corruption in developing world is huge. And when we look up to the countries which are developed, like Scandinavian or other countries, and even in Japan, it is to some extent can be controlled. The corruption is less. And when we look to the politician in Japan or in other countries, vice versa, like Scandinavian, once a politician is caught, he is out from the business. But in India, when a politician is caught, he is ascended in the protocol order. He becomes better and best. So what is your take? Why can't we have something from the Supreme Court or anything that a person who makes such a crime should not come to that business, even in the business world also. If you do a crime, you become more, rich. And why we can't have that much of things in India that is being prevalent in Japan or in Scandinavian or Nordic or other countries?
Well, I think it's unfair comparison to make India with others. We have suffered almost 1,000 years of foreign aggression, brutality, corruption. The British were one of the most corrupt people that you can think of. They looted left, right, and center. The Soviet model was another disaster. So I'm surprised that India has survived all that. And now we have to turn it around. There's no use comparing with others. We must make this a clean society. And if you look at, say, the Chinese travelers, Buddhist travelers who came in 4th century, the first thing they mention is how honest the people of India are. They don't even lock their doors when they go out in the evening and so on. Well, I don't know whether there the opportunities are so much that you could do much corruption. But I would certainly say that my own feeling in this country is that people, if they can get the confidence that, yes, you will fight corruption, they are with you. And I do think that they voted for us thinking that we'll wipe out corruption. And we need to encourage that and make sure that we deliver some amount of goods.
So it is evident that you are very closely monitors the performance of finance ministers.
Yeah.
So how do you see the performance of the latest one, Mr. Piyush Goyal?
Piyush Goyal? I don't think they are allowing him to function as a finance minister.
So who are they? The politicians or the bureaucrats?
The bureaucrats.
The bureaucrats.
Finance ministry has a lot of crooks in it. And I'm after them, and I'll get them.
So once you mentioned about Big Four, you tweeted about Big Four also.
Gang of Four.
Gang of Four. So all those four are in the finance ministry only, or some of them are in PMO also?
One of them is the finance secretary, and the others are not in finance.
So where are they, sir?
Well, you'll know. One is in CBI. I've identified him also.
Yeah, no, please.
Yes, I tell the Prime Minister frankly. He was Mr. Adya did not get cabinet rank, cabinet secretary position. He was, everybody had announced he is going to take over. But after I brought out one or two things, including getting gold biscuits from Nirav Modi, the Prime Minister immediately acted, even though they are very close friends. But I must say, to the credit of the Prime Minister, he said no, he will not be cabinet secretary.
Hello, sir. I'm Ronajoy from Bloomberg.
Yes.
How do you interpret the no confidence motion today? It's clear the government has the numbers. So what purpose does it?
I think if somebody wants to commit suicide, that's the best way to commit suicide. You see, first of all, they were boasting that the numbers. In fact, the numbers are pathetic. We have got, I think, more than 331 votes in the Lok Sabha. I think they haven't taken the vote yet, but 630. But you will find we'll get about 330. So that's a big blow. That the BJP is falling apart. All the allies are running away, going away. All that has all been smashed. Two, they made the big mistake by asking Telugu Desam to lead the thing. And Telugu Desam draft says that last 4 years no work has taken place. They were part of the government for the last 4 years. So at least they should say in our ministry we did this. But the rest of the ministries, nothing happened. But they were a disaster. Then I don't know what happened to Rahul Gandhi. Perhaps he had an overdose of something that he has normally. And he went and embraced the Prime Minister in the Parliament. I mean, I've never seen anything so childish. And so I think they made a spectacle of themselves. And I think 2019, I think we are all set now to get majority again.
Last two questions. Ashok.
How far you will take up the National Herald case and Rahul Gandhi's dual citizenship? Number two, how do you view the developments like acquittal of A. Raja and the flight of Nirav Modi and Vijay Mallya?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as far as National Herald is concerned, I'm there tomorrow in Patiala House to depose as to how I came to the conclusion that there's a crime committed. Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, then this Madhya Pradesh man, Motilal Vora, Oscar Fernandez, Suman Dubey, and Sam Petroda. These are the 6 accused. How they conspired to make sure that they can take that whole National Herald company, it's called Associated Journals Limited Company, as a wholly owned subsidiary of a small company they started called Young Indian, with only 5 lakh rupees. And this has got 5,000 crores worth of property. So they did take it over. And I am making that, after that I'll be cross-examined by their lawyers. Then arguments will start. And I think by July, by this year end, I expect to win the case, because it's an open shut. It's all based on documents. And I don't think that I have any problem with that. Now, as far as the other thing you mentioned, dual citizenship. I gave it first to Parliament, to the Speaker, that Mr. Rahul Gandhi started a company called Back Ops in London. And they, like we have registrar of companies, they have something called company company house. They call it a company house. So that's a part of the British government. They post, they have a website. And Rahul Gandhi had, for 4 years continuing, had filed Back Ops company accounts, etc., under his own signature. Because there were only 2 directors, and him one, and somebody who was a dummy, I think. So he, in his own handwriting, in the column for citizenship, says, I'm British citizen. So I gave it to the Speaker. Speaker then immediately sent it to the Ethics Committee under Article 9 of our Constitution. Nobody can be, no Indian can have a citizenship of another country. So, and if he or she does, the Indian citizenship will be automatically cancelled. So I asked for automatic cancellation. This was sent to the Ethics Committee. It was headed by Advani. And Advani, I think, has got a very large heart, so he's sitting on it. So finally I sent it to the Home Ministry. The Home Ministry has now sent it to the CBI. CBI is contacting Interpol. And I hope in another 2 months to see Mr. Rahul Gandhi as a foreign citizen and not as an Indian citizen. Me, how many things you want me to go to court on? See, I have enough problems. I'm not a lawyer, you know. This is my secondary interest. My primary interest is politics. And the other ones, the A. Raja... yes, that's an important question, because there's so much propaganda on it. Yes, it's a fact that they were acquitted. But India is a 3-tier system, legally. And so the CBI has gone in appeal to the High Court. I may tell you, I got the 2G spectrum licenses cancelled. But I went to the High Court. The person who's today the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he was the High Court Chief Justice. And he dismissed my petition. And I went in appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld it. So this happens very often. And one shouldn't be swayed by propaganda. That was a bad judgment. And I can't say in public much more, but I'll say it's a bad judgment. He didn't apply his mind, and he gave a wrong order. And it will be overturned in the High Court.
Leave that to me. That's...
Vijay Mallya, why are you? He's coming back, don't worry. He was helped by a friend in our government who changed the lookout notice from stop him from leaving to report that he's leaving. And Nirav Modi was, there was a raid in his premises, all his premises on 14th January 2017. And till December, Mr. Adia did nothing. So he's going to be prosecuted on that, I can tell you.
Dr. Swamy, you've been talking of a utopian state. You say if you have excess, then, give it away, share it with the others. Maybe we can set an example if we catch the big fish. Whereas the big fish has all been, allowed to move. And in every walk of life, you find whether it is capitation fee, whether it is facilitation fee, or whether it is, tatkal fee, everywhere it is deep, rooted. So how do you see that a change can come about?
Well, see, I've been hearing these kinds of things before when I was fighting against the emergency. People used to say that democracy is for the educated people. And what do these masses who have to fill their stomachs know about democracy? If Mrs. Gandhi holds an election, she'll win hands down. And it is very strong in the West, particularly because that time I had escaped to America to canvass against the emergency. And all my American colleagues in Harvard University was only telling me this. But when the election took place, I found the educated part of India voted for Indira Gandhi, namely Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Kerala, and Karnataka. And lock, stock and barrel, I mean 80%, 90% of seats. But it is this illiterate UP wala who defeated every Congress person. So did the Biharis, so did the Madhya Pradeshis and the Rajasthanis. And because of that, Mrs. Gandhi lost the election. And we could get rid of the emergency. So I think maybe every aspect of Indian life is corrupt. But I still feel that large numbers of people, if they can be shown and that it is possible, corruption can be removed, they'll side with you. And I've seen it in maybe not too far back. You can see how Mahatma Gandhi with nothing, just a loincloth, the whole country went behind him. Jayaprakash Narayan didn't hold any position. And he created this Janata Party and this anti-emergency struggle. I think this country's ancient traditions are so deeply in the psyche of the Indians. If you can create confidence that you will fight corruption, people will come with you. Kejriwal is a Naxalite. How can he be possibly? No, you don't need. Somebody has to do it. I don't know. Anna Hazare, the less said about him, the better. But the fact is that there is confidence today, I find. When I travel around the country, people think that corruption can be removed. And there are more people should do it and not give up the fight and say, no, this country is already completely sunk. It's not so. I remember, I very often go to China. They are good friends of mine. One of the things once when I met Deng Xiaoping, and he asked me that what was it in the Indians that in 1962 they were told that if India gets a knock, it will break into 20 countries. But instead, women were coming out, taking their gold bangles and putting it in the defense fund. What is that spirit? And we've seen that in many crises, Indians suddenly become different people than what you now see them as. So I think that spirit is latent. We should revive it. you should make enough money, but if you make more than you really need, then you should give it in philanthropy. And the person who's learned and is also simple, that's what I call as Gyani and Tyagi. That is the man who is the top of the society, not the richest person in your country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swamy, for such an interesting session of 1 hour.